After 7 years of anticipation, anxiety, and prayer, the small town of Delphi, Indiana, got a measure of justice today. A jury today found Richard Allen guilty on all 4 charges in the murders of teenagers Abby Williams and Libby German. People gathered outside the courthouse as the verdict was read. It was something of a nail-biter. The jury deliberated over 4 days before reaching its decision after hearing nearly 3 weeks of often gruesome testimony. During the trial, prosecutors said Allen used the element of fear to lure the friends down a hill and then slashed their throats. The defense argued that law enforcement botched the investigation. Allen will be sentenced on December 20th and is facing up to 130 years in prison. Joining me now is NewsNation legal contributor and Law and Crime Network host Jesse Weber and journalist and author Susan Hendricks. She's been in the courtroom every day covering the trial. Her interest in the case has gone back years to a book that she wrote called Down the Hill, a deep dive into the Delphi murders. Susan, I'm going to start with you. What was the reaction in the courtroom when the guilty verdicts were read?
Wow, it was surreal. I got a text because I was with one of Libby's friends that I met 5 days ago, and she said, you know, I want to go by Libby's gravesite. Will you come with me? I want to leave a bracelet. We were there. I get a text that says verdict. We sped back here. It's about 5 minutes away, and we're waiting and waiting and wondering how is this going to come down. All of a sudden, guilty, and everything erupts, and it was so surreal. And I got emotional because you're thinking as the days go on, Elizabeth, as you mentioned, 4 days, I'm thinking, hung jury, do the families have to go through this again? And as you said, it's been 7 years. So there was a kind of sigh of relief on my end.
As you said, the jury deliberated 18 hours over 4 days. They were sequestered. And they asked again to watch the so-called bridge guy video, that one of the girls recorded on her phone moments before they were attacked. And it shows a man who looks a lot like Allen, dressed a lot like Allen was dressed that day, saying, guys, down the hill.
Yeah, Elizabeth, they wanted to hear that piece of evidence. So what was on Libby's phone when she hit record? And we saw that during the trial 4 times in closing arguments as well. And they wanted to hear this interview with then Detective Holman, who I just texted and said, oh my gosh, he said, yeah. Detective Holman, when he interviewed Richard Allen, they wanted to compare voices of Richard Allen's to what was on Libby's phone. And when people ask me this, what do you think the biggest piece of evidence is? Is it the bullet found in between the girls, the unspent bullet? Is it the confessions? To me, it was Richard Allen. Part of the confessions, him telling his wife and mother that he did it, and Richard Allen on that phone. And I believe one of the jurors wanted to compare the voices to say, is it really him?
Yeah, Jesse, we've been talking a lot about these jailhouse confessions. First of all, inmates, he was in state prison while awaiting trial, not in county prison where people are normally held. His team, his defense lawyers argued he was in solitary in the state prison. He went crazy, that he was psychotic. But there are 60 confessions to his wife where he says things like, I killed the girls, do you still love me?
Right. And look, they didn't have much room to argue, but what they said was 13 months in solitary confinement. He confessed to everybody, the warden, guards, family, and it went from, I did it, to I think I did it, maybe I did it, I don't know. And so they were basically saying it's false confessions, and they brought that out. When you have somebody who admits that, on top of what is, yes, circumstantial evidence, but key evidence, the idea of him admitting he was on the trail, his description of his clothes matches Bridge Guy. His voice seemed to match up to Bridge Guy's voice. The unspent cartridge matches up to a gun that he owned. All of that together, there was not one single piece of evidence that convicted him, but in the totality. And I tell you, we were talking about it. Was I surprised by the verdict? Not necessarily, and I wasn't surprised that it took the jury so long. This was not a straightforward case for the prosecution, and I'm not surprised it took them even over the weekend to come to a verdict.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.